Now, the United States is in the middle of another migration crisis. 2 million illegal immigrants have been caught crossing the southern border over the past year, and it's about to get a whole lot worse, people fear, because thousands of migrants are camping in Mexico, waiting for a pandemic border policy to expire a few days before Christmas. It's called Title 42. And a little earlier, I caught up with the Hill Columnist Kristin Tate in Houston, who explained what all this means.
Yeah, so this title has been used to essentially keep migrants in Mexico on the other side of the border, using the pandemic as the reason. But this measure has been stretched out because the Biden administration does not want illegal immigration numbers to swell even more than they already are. But these migrants, they know that this measure is about to expire, so they are planning to surge the border, which is totally terrifying, Chris, because even with these measures, these pandemic measures in place, we are already seeing record numbers of illegal aliens coming across that border. In July, 200,000 migrants were apprehended at the border. Over the last year, over 2 million illegal immigrants were arrested. And these are just the people who are getting caught. And for reference, the Obama administration considered 1,000 apprehensions a day to be a crisis. We are way beyond that at this point. And I just want to, make this comparison for your audience. I mean, 2 million migrants per year, that exceeds the populations of many large U.S. cities. It exceeds the populations of Philadelphia, of Phoenix, of San Antonio. You cannot just continue to import essentially large U.S. cities every few months with no consequences. We are seeing spiking crime. The schools are overflooded, especially down here in Texas. The hospitals are overflooded. Crime is through the roof because fentanyl and drugs are just pouring across that border. So when these pandemic-related measures expire and more illegal immigrants surge the border, it is going to get a lot worse than it already is.
It is amazing. In Australian terms, that's a city the size of Perth or Brisbane coming across your southern border every year. Now, of course, this Title 42, everybody knows is expiring. So what's the Biden administration's plan? What is their plan to try and prevent this influx when it expires?
Of course, they have no plan. Our border czar is Kamala Harris, our vice president. It's a joke. She still doesn't even go to the border in person to deal with this crisis. If anything, they've been incentivizing this. And people need to realize, migrants and would-be migrants living in Central America and in Mexico, they read the papers, they read the news, they know what's going on, they know this is about to happen, and they realize that right now we have an administration that's doing nothing to secure our border. So they know this is the time to come across, not when Trump is in office, not when a future Republican is in office, right now, because this administration is doing nothing.
Yeah, it's a real worry. We'll have to keep an eye on what transpires there. In better news, last week you got to celebrate Thanksgiving, but I noticed that the turkey prices were through the roof, and I noticed also that Joe Biden and his government officials were blaming Vladimir Putin, blaming the increase in turkey prices on the invasion of Ukraine. Just about everything gets blamed on Putin these days.
Yeah, of course, Biden's blaming Russia for high turkey prices. Who else are they going to blame? Donald Trump's no longer president. The Democrats have full control, but there is no one to blame but themselves and their foolish fiscal policy, their inflationary spending. And let's not forget, Chris, this inflation started long before Russia invaded Ukraine. In February of this year, right before the invasion, consumer prices were already up 7.5%. But, it's just easier to blame Russia rather than fix the root problem. At this point, Russia is to blame for the 2016 election, for high gas and food prices, for inflation, for everything that ails America. It's just a great excuse.
Yeah, in fact, Russia was to blame for Donald Trump being elected in the first place, apparently. Let's have a look here at Joe Biden, though. The number of things, especially price-related, that he's blaming on Putin.
Putin's war is already hurting American families at the gas pump.
70% of the increase in prices in March came from Putin's price hike.
The second big reason for inflation is Vladimir Putin. Not a joke. The Putin price hike. Putin's price hike. Every kitchen table cost is going to go up, not down. It's inching up because of what the Russians and the Saudis just did.
Very simple, isn't it, Kristin? Just blame Putin.
These people are so predictable. I mean, it's all about politics. But the good news for Joe Biden and the Democrats is that next year, when their own policies continue hurting Americans, they'll have the Republican House, in Congress that they can try to blame all of this on. But it's obviously related to their inflationary spending. And, this is just so simple. I mean, inflation literally just means more dollars chasing the same number of goods. This is what happens when you pump so much money into the system that each individual dollar becomes worth less. But instead of trying to rein in the spending and rein in the money printing, this administration is just hell-bent on continuing to spend trillions and trillions of dollars every few months on these boondoggle bills and getting everyone hooked on government checks and pumping money into the system. That is obviously going to make the problem much worse. But, they'll just continue blaming Russia and Republicans in the meantime.
It's a problem, I got to tell you. Plenty of other governments around the world making the same mistake and finding the same excuses. Thanks so much for joining us again, Kristin.
Thanks as always, Chris.